My name is Ed Salau. I was a first lieutenant in the North Carolina Army National Guard. I was deployed to Iraq from February through November 15th of 2004 with the North Carolina Army National Guard. A typical mission in Iraq started with rehearsals. We would rehearse for hours on the forward operating base. We would practice our actions on the objective, whether our actions would be meeting with a local religious leader in a town or a village, or meeting with a local elected official, or simply doing a security patrol. Sometimes we would do some patrols with the Iraqi military or Iraqi policemen, depending on the village, the size of the city or town we were in that day. Some missions would last only a couple of hours. Some missions would last a couple of days. On November 15th of 2004, we were doing a security patrol. It was the end of Ramadan, so faithful Muslims were celebrating the end of Ramadan by breaking their month-long fast. They were partying and eating and celebrating their faith for 3 days. The extremists in that faith thought that killing an infidel, in their eyes, would somehow get them a better eternity in their concept of heaven. So on November 15, 2004, right around dinner time, we were returning from a 4-hour patrol, and my platoon was ambushed by enemy insurgents. The enemy insurgents fired rocket-propelled grenades at my vehicle. 2 of those RPGs hit the side of my vehicle. One of them penetrated the armored hull of my Bradley fighting vehicle, and that RPG tore off my left leg above the knee. It also tore off my gunner's right leg above the knee. The 2 of us bailed out of the vehicle and watched as our men. We bailed out of the vehicle, and my platoon was able to repel the enemy ambush. They also were able to stabilize us and treat our wounds. About an hour after the event, we were flown by helicopter and medevaced to the nearest hospital. If I'm viewed as successful, since having been ambushed and wounded and being awarded the Purple Heart, I'd like to think it's because, number one, I stared death in the face. And I won. I lived. So I'm going to live. I'm going to live this life to the fullest, whether it's my personal life or my professional life. That's what I'm going to do. The Purple Heart means to me that a service member was wounded. A volunteer service member was wounded. We don't have a draft anymore. Every military member you see has volunteered to serve, particularly after September 11th. If that service member enlisted, they watched the newscasts. They watched deployed service members go into harm's way on their behalf. And then they saw them, some of them, like me, get wounded. And they still chose to join. I'm emotionally moved by that spirit of service that endures in our country. That our volunteers today are not deterred or scared. They're courageous, they're brave, they're patriots. The biggest misconception I think people have about the Purple Heart Medal is that somehow a service member will have visible wounds, like we see an amputee or we see a paralyzed veteran in a wheelchair. Some of the wounds are what we call invisible, whether it's scars covered by a t-shirt and trousers, or it's a traumatic brain injury where the service member's world was rocked. That service member's bell was rung by high explosive ordnance. They may actually be struggling to remember their way to the grocery store. They may be struggling to use those parts of the brain that are good for emotion and compassion and dealing with their family members. And so the biggest misconception is definitely that there'll be some visible wound or injury. The Purple Heart Medal, it actually makes me feel connected to veterans of prior wars and conflicts. For example, the Vietnam veterans, the Korean War veterans, and on the rare occasion I get to meet with a World War II veteran. They bled. Some of them bled for our nation, bled for the liberties we share and enjoy. I feel connected to them because they're part of a population, a very small group, that doesn't take our liberties for granted. That we know the freedoms we enjoy were paid for by blood and sacrifice. And in some cases, the service members died doing just that. And it's not hard really to strike up a conversation with a Purple Heart recipient from prior conflicts. We have one very important thing in common, and we bled. I know Purple Heart Day isn't commonly observed, and I think an appropriate way to observe Purple Heart Day would be to thank a Purple Heart recipient. If you can't find one, be sure you were thanking all the veterans on your way to looking for one. Also, an appropriate way to celebrate Purple Heart Day is enjoy the life we have. Don't let the enemy win. Spend time with family. Travel. Just bask in the liberties we have. There are people around this world that don't have them, and there are places in this world my brothers and sisters went to fight to secure for them. This Purple Heart Day, I'm not going to let the enemy win, because I am going to spend time with family. I'm probably going to cook an animal on a grill. And I might enjoy some adult beverages. And I'll remember those war fighters and toast those service members we lost during my deployment in 2004. I'll toast to Staff Sergeant Boss. I'll toast to Specialist Dessens, Specialist Carasquillo, and Captain Cash. They also have Purple Hearts, but they died earning theirs. I would like to highlight one organization that I think is doing great things for service members, disabled service members, combat injured warfighters, and that's Operation Enduring Warrior. Their mission is to honor and empower veterans, disabled veterans, and they do it by seeking us out and showing us one obstacle at a time how to overcome it, and then we overcome it. And we do that on obstacle course races. We'll climb high walls, we'll climb ropes, we'll crawl through mud. And we'll do it as a team. We'll carry heavy buckets through the woods, through streams, and we'll do it as a team. And you know what it does? When you're with Operation Enduring Warrior and you're participating in an event, you're rekindling that fire of teamwork, that cohesiveness we enjoyed as members of the military. And then, when we realize we're not that limited by our disabilities, our physical limitations, it's perceived by others. We tackle our average workday like that. We stop saying I can't. We start saying I can, I will, I did, a whole lot more.